opening statement, Garen? Yes, sir. Okay. I learned a long time ago, do what he says. Well, obviously on the day before training camp begins, there's a crescendo of enthusiasm, as you head into camp. And it's been a good summer for us. I think we've had a lot of contact with our players. We've touched our players a lot. People have worked. We've worked collectively, and excited to get going. I think this is a group that, last year having an opportunity to kind of feel and experience this team. A few things happened in the summer that that you think about, respond to, try to continue to develop basically plans and a path for a team to get better throughout a year. And mixing together that urgency and desire to be good from day one on, and with kind of the realism involved in the fact that growth usually isn't linear, and understanding that we're going to have some challenges along the way and to embrace them. So all those things kind of woven together right now. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting when, as there's always, we always look at, I would agree with you 100% on Dame coming to the East. Anytime that you add a player that, when I say agree with you, that he makes whatever team he's on better. I think it's also, sometimes it's hard to predict, where teams are. That's the way we have the season, although a lot of those things are often fairly accurate. It doesn't always take into account teams getting better. And I think for us, obviously, John's in Utah now. By and large, our group is consistent, similar to the group we had last year. So a lot of our improvement and development needs to come internally. And that's something that I think is important for us as a coaching staff and for our players and for you guys also to be mindful of, and that's a little harder to measure. You measure it certainly with your record, but you also can measure it in more subtle kind of ways that aren't always as observable. So it's that's an exciting part of this job. It's also a really challenging one because, as I said before, growth's not always linear, and it also doesn't always happen overnight. So along the way, whatever those challenges, other than like Boston on the road in the Garden, there's a lot of other little things that maybe are more impactful than you think. Sometimes it's after a win. How did you win? Are you winning, by outscoring an opponent and it doesn't feel like you're not executing defensively as much because you're winning, or can we keep getting better? Ideally, you win and you keep getting better.
Coach, this is your first time having a full off season as the leader of the Atlanta Hawks. What are some of your expectations as you move into a full season as a coach, and then some of your expectations as you continue to embed your philosophy among the team?
Yeah, it's interesting. I last year was valuable in a lot of ways. I was talking with a friend the other day, and kind of getting a head start on implementing your system. That we didn't get a head start on that. We're starting that now. What we got a head start on, I think, was having even though it's a small body, is a body of work from which to kind of analyze and try to kind of understand and evaluate, and from that point trying to come up with, whether it be tactical things, strategic things, points of emphasis as much as anything, that when training camp starts, we can begin to embrace and teach and try to execute. I think the summer was about that growth process that I referred to earlier. Our guys continuing to improve. We had a lot of guys that worked, and we need to keep working. The season is about hard work. I would like for that to be characteristic of our system. I think, us being a selfless team is huge, and you can point to that in so many different areas, whether it's taking a charge, making the extra pass, running back on defense, celebrating your teammates' successes, all those different things, demonstrate an unselfish mindset. And I would like for our team, I would like for that to be something that's obvious when you watch us play. With that, my job to try to create systems, style of play that facilitates those things. I mentioned spacing a lot last year, and spacing allows you to move the ball. It allows you to attack, and even though it sounds, if you think of it, it's subtle, but if you're spaced properly, sometimes that can be as simple as like you're not in someone's way when they get to go lay the ball in. And so that's, again, you're doing something for someone else. And I think, what we do defensively, taking some of the things we saw last year, certain lineups have been challenged, other lineups have been better than others. There's a little bit of a reset in that respect in my mind, if we have different schemes. But schemes, there's certain things you want to take with you and learn from. There's other things you say to yourself, I'm not sure that's as relevant. And for me, one of the biggest things defensively, it doesn't matter what scheme we have. It doesn't matter what the game plan is. Defense has to be a decision. We have to make a decision. And when you make that decision, that doesn't mean you're going to just, all of a sudden defense magically occurs. That's a decision to work, to value something, to make it important. And at that point is when you can start to get better. And that process and that understanding, I think, is really paramount for our team on the way in. The same way, understanding that when we play unselfishly, that's going to connect our team more, and I think that makes it easier to make that decision to defend.
Coach, you talked about internal growth.
Mm-hmm.
What can we expect from your two guys from your alma mater, Duke and AJ and Jacob this year?
Those guys, that process has begun for them, and I think it's important to, where are the most important things where that growth can be most impactful to them and to our team. And my expectation, I've talked a lot about my staff. I think, we're going to pour all of ourselves into those players, and, we want the same thing from them. And, the work that both those guys did this offseason, you want that stuff to translate. And they both work hard. They both love to play. And they're fun guys you look forward to coaching. When I was looking at this job and the possibility that it could work out, there are two guys that you look at and say, it'd be kind of fun to coach that guy. So we're excited about a lot of our young guys. And those two in particular, they're different players, but they complement each other well, and they both have to make a decision to defend. Maybe we kind of forget, when we think about development, we think about player development, we think a lot about skills, and they are important: shooting, ball handling, passing. Equally important is how do you play with other people on offense? How do you make people around you better? And then additionally, how do you defend? How can you defend individually and how you defend as a team? That's a little harder to work on. That's more something you see people working on when the team gets together. But, that's something that we're going to push as well,
Hey, Coach. One thing that you've emphasized throughout your coaching career is adapting your offensive approach and scheming towards the personnel on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So for this year's Hawks squad, how do you plan to balance aspects of pace and space, pick and roll, and other offensive concepts to create that optimal offensive system?
You dug down and got that, huh? I firmly believe that. For any coach to try to maximize the players that you have, and that means you're not always going to have players with the same skill set in a team. How do they connect with each other? I think one of the key things is to know what you're really good at, and then also to know what can you improve at, and to not forget about what you do really well in the interest of just change for change's sake. So I think for us, we've been a really good offensive team. You know, we are really good playing pick and roll with our fives, particularly with Clint and O. Trey's gifted in that area. DJ's plays pick and roll in a different way, but that's been a big point of emphasis for him. You know, even this summer, he's worked on his pick and roll game. We want to continue to embrace that, but we also want to figure out how to move the ball in other ways, you know, to score out of other actions and other concepts. So we can have even more variety. And then we use Trey as an example. You know, Trey's so good at pick and roll. Trey's good off the ball too. You know, but the challenge is you can say that, but you know, Trey, well, what do you want me to do off the ball? You know, that's. I think it becomes important for us to ask as coaches, how can we help these? If there's things we want them to do, you know, how can we try to create opportunities for them where they can do them? So, you know, DeAndre's post-up game, you know, those are all things, and I think, as you said, part of that adaptation, that's not like a decision that you make, and it just is. You know, that stuff you have to work on and grow, you know, over time, and then there's adjustments to it. You know, you may find out that the player doesn't know if he's better on the left side of the floor or the right side of the floor, but you start to figure that out. You know, someone shooting their range, whatever. You're developing individual styles of play and a collective style of play that hopefully fits the group. And, you know, in doing that, you know, the key thing is for the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts. You know, and the more people that are involved in what we're doing, I think the greater the likelihood that we can raise that whole.
Coach, you obviously have a better feel for the organization and the team and the players. We've been stressing being selfless, defense, hard work. What will you change specifically in a